Hello everyone and welcome to another Outside Views live stream. And I saw there were some people in the chat already. And I start with hi Chatty, hi Roseanne, hi Katrina, and especially Ali, seriously. Someday I have to make this live stream from your Sunday dinner table. Absolutely, whenever I see your menu cards. I get the feeling that someday I have to do that. And I'm quite sure I didn't know what advertisement you saw before the video, but the one I saw definitely had nothing to do with Ellie's menu card, because I almost couldn't stop laughing when I saw that one. But I better don't say what kind of ad I saw before my live stream. It's starting well already. I hope you had a nice week. I hope your weather was okay, because in some places the weather is not doing such nice things. I was happy when it got much colder in my area, because, you know, we talked about how hot it gets in the studio here. But the thunderstorms in between and the last 2 days, we had such a damp weather because of the rain in between, and then it was sunny again. It was damp like hell. Not so nice. And no, Ellie, if you really want to know, probably I had the better one, Katrina. If you saw one about Nigel Farage, no, I had an advertisement on diarrhea medication before my live stream when I saw it. They must have known that Katrina would have write something about Nigel Farage. That must be the reason, and not your menu card. But Nigel Farage I talked about in this week already. My count is 2 bankers have lost their job so far because of Nigel Farage. If you heard something about more, let me know. But that was what we heard here in Germany. And it was 2 bankers yet. And so they definitely will not like Nigel Farage too much. But what I said there about this cancel culture, I was serious about. No matter what an idiot this guy is, there should be limits what you do to these people. In the end, it's for the law to handle them if they go too far. If they are just disgusting idiots, there still have to be limits, because you never know who they're going to turn against afterwards, especially nowadays with all these overburdened PC, and so you see in some places. If it's just a disgusting idiot, there must be limits. And I wanted to repeat that because I saw a lot of comments that went the other direction, and we're still talking about human beings, maybe disgusting human beings, but still human beings. And so that should be, for the sensitive, I hope, majority among us, should be the point to measure what can be done and what can't be done. But that wasn't the topic I was picking for today's video. But as soon as Nigel Farage came up again, I had to repeat that. I just wanted to start with something. It's sad, but it's at the same time, funny as well. Because I don't know if you heard it. That's why I picked it for the stream today. The UK and the US have both sent sensitive emails about hypersonic weapons and the development of new ones to one of Putin's allies. And that didn't only happen once. And people, you might just think that will make you smile, but I'm sure this will have consequences. But what happened there? Because of a mere typo, several emails destined for the US Pentagon from the UK, it was that way around, ended up in Mali. And if you've seen my other channels, you know about the whole fuss with the foreign troops in Mali that were there for peacekeeping missions and so on, and the new government, which is not very democratic, wants them out, and there was a lot of stuff going on, and they are real friends with Putin. And messengers, and some of them really contained sensitive data, ended up in the hands of the country which has close ties to Russia, and has repeatedly sided with Putin since the start of the Ukraine war. But it didn't only happen to the British, because there were also some from the USA, and that happened a lot. But why did this happen? It's just one letter. The .mil at the end of the email address is for messages to the Pentagon. But if you forget the I and just send the emails to .ml, they end up in Mali. And that is the reason why a lot of messages meant for the Pentagon ended up in Mali. The question I was asking to myself when I read this on a press agency today: how could they know what the content of these things is? Because I thought if they are sending emails with stuff like that, they would at least be encrypted somehow. I mean, encryption isn't between governments should be possible, that there is some NATO standard or whatever they can use. But obviously they were just open emails. That was even much worse, I thought, than the fact that they had a typo and sent them to the wrong place, because that happens so often. You must have some precautions for that, but obviously they don't. And they send sensitive material, obviously, in open emails. That is something they should think about. And perhaps for the last weeks of service, that should be a topic for Ben Wallace. Sorry, we all know he wants to leave, but he should have a look on his ministerium, his ministry, how they are sending emails to allies and about stuff like that. That would be probably a good idea to do that. And if it wasn't that tragic, because it really was sensitive material according to the press agencies, that would just be funny, and it would just be another they can't be serious topic. But it obviously is serious. But that's stuff you can't make up. If I would write that in a book, people would say, oh, that's too obvious, that's so unrealistic. Yep, reality surprises us much more than fiction in many ways. Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah, end-to-end encryption, that's what I meant, Ellie. That is what I thought, that they at least would have, if governments work together on a military project, I would expect some kind of minimum security in the communications between them. But obviously this hasn't happened in this case. Funny as it is. But that was just one to get us started with a topic some probably will not believe, because there is some more serious stuff also. Sorry, I had a phone call shortly before the live chat, because a friend of mine left Germany again for the UK today. She was here for over a week, and at least on the German side, including the departure times and the trains, etc., everything worked fine. So I was on the phone earlier again to hear if everything is working. And so I obviously talk too much. If I talk too much a day in this dry heat here in the studio, I always get this coughing. I got completely rid of them when I stopped smoking normal cigarettes and switched to the other stuff, which I'm not advertising here for. All this smoker's coughing was gone, but my studio makes me cough even more. But yeah, the temperature thing. No, but I wanted to go to one topic again because of the by-elections. We had the big topic of the ULIS in London, and now there's an update because this week the decision of a lawsuit came regarding the ULIS, so the ultra-low emission zones that were to be expanded to Uxbridge, and that's why the Conservatives could do their campaigning against climate protection there, and they very narrowly won Boris Johnson's ex-constituency in the by-election just because of that tipping. And but it is going to happen. Driving older vehicles is about to become an expensive proposition across London because the lawsuit against the ULIS from the inner city and the expansion from the inner city area to the entire city was dismissed by a court on Friday. And nothing is now in the way of the ULIS extension, and that is due to come into force on August 29th. And you know that Sadiq Khan, who didn't invent this, it was invented in the first place when Boris Johnson was mayor of London, but he is still for the extension, and he praised the High Court's decision as groundbreaking. He said the upcoming expansion will allow 5 million more Londoners to breathe fresh air. And according to him, around 4,000 people die every year in the British capital as a result of air pollution. And this will just mean that all the drivers that have cars that don't bring these ULIS emission limits will have to pay 12 pounds. What's going on? £12.50. I have to sort my letters today. Per day when they want to enter the ULIS area or drive inside it. And that means, at least TfL says it, so Transport for London says, that will be every 10th car. And you know from the by-election at least that this is really unpopular. And this lawsuit came up because the district administrations of 5 London suburbs had sued against the expansion, in each case with a Conservative majority. And I talked about this in a video this week. The Conservatives want to use climate protection and measures for climate protection in the next campaign, because a lot of them are discussing it at the moment, that it would be a brilliant campaigning topic to do so. And that will go on cost of climate protection. I mean, here in Germany, most parties are of the same opinion pro-climate protection. What they differ in is the ways. And in the ways, I even differ with my own party in some points. But the problem here is what makes the right-wingers a bit stronger is how they put it on the people and how a certain party wants to put it on the people. But in the UK, they had high goals and they still have ways to do this. And then now they're rowing back just for campaigning reasons. And I really have to compare the British Tories now, not with the German Conservatives. They have nothing in common anymore, at least not under the current leadership and the current majorities in the Tory party in England. I'm already saying England. But I have to compare them to the AfD here in Germany, the extreme right-wingers. Even some of them I can freely call fascists here by name if I want to, because courts ruled like that. And that you can do that because it's proven. So that will be another hit for the British, just for votes. We all know we have to do something for the climate. As I said, we can discuss the ways to do it. You know that I totally disagree with the last generation here in Germany and Extinction Rebellion and their methods. They are just criminals. For me, who commits crimes to get what they want, they are just criminals, and they completely disqualify themselves for any discussion with me. But we need to do something that is obvious, and to completely row back just to win one election. And if they win this with this topic is the other question, but that will harm the country much more. And there you see why people get more and more distance from politics overall and from all the parties. Because if everybody can see in the light of day that they are just changing their minds for votes, who will trust politicians? I mean, the trust in politicians is quite low anyway, but that will completely crash it. But it's the same problem here. With the way talking about the ways, you have to make local public transport completely attractive to make people leave their car at home, and not make it hard for them to use their car and force them to use a not really well-working public transport. And that's the thing that must be thought over. But just making a complete U-turn for election reasons, and I come to a Labour U-turn later in this live stream as well, that is not the way to do it. But we know now that the Tories will most probably do that. And we will see how successful they will be with that. If they once again can make people believe them, then I completely lose trust in the British voters after Brexit and the referendum. Because I don't know if the English proverb is the same, but we have fool me once, you're an ass. Fool me twice and I'm an idiot. And if that happens, I completely lose my trust in the British voters. But that's something we will see in the end of 2024 or the beginning of 2023. I see it's quite calm on the live stream today. I see 14 people watching, but as I said, I don't mind. A lot watch it later, I know that, but I really like, even if it's just a few of you live here with me, I really like spending some live time with you. That's why I try to restart my live streams again, and it's always nice to see some comments directly, because usually I only see them afterwards, and they have to get back to Ellie and one of her comments this week. They're especially in times like at the moment where my videos are running really well again. After the hacking stuff, it was really bad, but now my videos are running quite well again, and there's so many comments I can't check every single one of them, and there are even more hundreds of comments blocked by YouTube for their phrasing already, or for using links. I said this in my old videos regularly, but I think I have to repeat this. You cannot use hashtags or links in the comments under the videos. YouTube will immediately block them and put them on my checklist. And there are so many videos every day in this checklist, I can't go through it and release comments that are fine. That would take up so much time that I wouldn't have time to film anything anymore. So what is blocked by YouTube will stay blocked. So please don't use hashtags or links in your comments, because I will not change that setting as well, because of course there are still so many bots out there that are trying to put in some weird gambling, crypto, or girls links in there, that I will not release links under my videos. And the other part is advertising for other YouTube channels. I choose who gets an advertisement on my channel, and that's why I don't allow links as well. But most is all those bots with their spam links, and they are a lot. They are probably always deleted by YouTube as accounts, but they're coming back in tons. But there are also the trolls, which are coming back. by name, and I always try they just have a new name or just a name with another number behind them or whatever. And I try to filter them out and the greatest idiots. But it's not always possible to do that immediately or to see them immediately, because if they only answer others, it's much harder to see than the comments itself and so on. And so it takes some time. And when there are so many comments, like at the moment, I cannot read them all anymore. That's unfortunately not possible. But I had to get rid of some people again this week, definitely. And some people just don't know how to have a civilized conversation. That is one of the biggest problems. You can have different opinions. That's absolutely fine. I encourage you to have discussions with all different opinions from the spectrum. But be civilized. As long as people discuss it civilized and not insulting others or using some insulting names for others and stuff like that. They can do that, but not with insults and uncivilized behavior. That's not what I'm having on this channel. And that was something I forgot to write in one comment, Ellie. When I block people, please don't hit on them by name anymore, because they cannot fight back. That is unfair as well. Sorry. Oh, this time Ellie got hit by a Nightbot. That's something I cannot turn off, by the way. I had to look at Nightbot again. And I cannot make it possible to send more messages in a short time. That is something I can't change, because Nightbot doesn't like that. And oh, that's funny now. And he blocks them then. And when there are too many messages in a very short time, because then he thinks it's spam. Yeah, I have no clue what annual train tickets cost here, because I'm not traveling that far. And before, when I had to travel into the Ruhrgebiet every day to teach and other stuff, but that's quite some time ago, I went with a car, because I had to go from city to city and have to be on appointments and stuff like that and had to be in time. That's why I went by car. But since I'm only, that's years ago as well, since when I only was teaching here in my hometown and not going anywhere else again. That's when I got rid of the car. I never got a car again. The very few times when I would ever need a car is to go to IKEA and buy some stuff or whatever. Although this was shipped. You can just rent one very easily. We have council cars here, so to speak, that you can rent. But usually, in a normal, if you live in a town and not on the countryside here in Germany, you can easily do without a car, and I decided to. But sometimes, since I moved here to my borough here, where I'm still working on local transport and the improvement of that, I regretted it, but in the most cases, it works fine. So it's not that I would really need a car here. And if I go to city center, I'm much faster now than I was with a car. And so that was my decision to do that. But some people need it, especially if they come from the outskirts to the city to work, because the connections are not that good and so on. So, trains are not always the prime option, especially not when they are not working properly. I had it this week again that the train was cancelled several times that I wanted to take, and it ended up with a bus. And the drive time home was about 5 times as long as with the train. So it's not always everything golden. But when we are at that already, then I want to go to one point that was in German news this week, again because of climate change. Because there's a big difference between the UK and Germany. Because you still remember from Boris Johnson his ideas with Hinkley Point. And there is now Hinkley Point C under construction. That was something Boris Johnson wanted. And Great Britain relies on nuclear energy to reduce its CO2 emissions. And it's not built by the British, it's built by the French state-owned company EDF. And they are building Hinkley Point C. It was originally supposed to cost 16 billion pounds, but now they expect that it will cost 32 billion pounds. This would make the plant the most expensive nuclear power plant in the world. So there we are again, the British with world-breaking records. In this case, it would be a world-breaking record. But it was always going to be expensive because they had to guarantee a high feed-in price, because otherwise EDF would not even have started to build that thing. So each kilowatt hour of the new power plant will probably twice as expensive as one from wind power. But I still believe that here in Germany would have been a good idea to let our existing ones run longer, because it would have been possible. They are really safe compared to some power plants surrounding our country, and it would have taken some pressure away that we are in now to reach our goals. But Hinkley Point C shows something, at least a problem with new power plants, because the plants were already there in 2007, I guess. And they wanted to start at 2017, so 2017. But they didn't start until 2013, or they made the pre-arrangements and started in 2016, so 1 year because it was going to start. And now the target date is now someone in 2028. And some people say it's still optimistic. But they also decided to build some copies of this. One copy of Hinkley Point C is going to be built in Sizewell, that's on the east coast of England, also by EDF. And this time they estimate a price of 20 billion. And they want to be ready in the 2030s. And we will see. But the Hinkley Point nuclear power plants are stable ones. The first one is running since 1965, the second one since 1976. They have been shut down, but they ran for quite some time, and they are building new ones. And it's something that I would have wished for Germany. If you are with my channel a bit longer, you know that I was against shutting down, or the shutdown decision after Fukushima here in Germany, because there was one accident somewhere else, and we know about the quality and the security measures of the German reactors. And so I was against it when Angela Merkel announced that already, and I said it at the time. And of course, I was for an extension of the last running reactors we had now this year, when the new government shut those down as well. But I'm not just turning my mind because of the war in Ukraine. That's what I want to say with this. You can watch much older videos of mine, and you will hear that I'm saying that it was a mistake by Angela Merkel to make that decision at the time after Fukushima. Of course, everybody here, under the impression of what happened in Fukushima, was completely pro shutting down. I wasn't, because I that time already asked the question, if you shut them down now, what are you going to replace it with? It's not only that we didn't have enough wind energy and so on, but we also don't have the power lines through the country, because the most wind energy is like with Scotland, you get it at the coast from offshore wind energy. You can do the most, but you have to transport that through the whole country to Bavaria in the German case, and the power grid isn't there to do that, not to transport that big amounts of energy southwards. And that's why I said at the time, you have to do all of this first, because before you can shut down the nuclear reactors. And everyone else around us is building new ones. I mean, you know that I'm not living that far away from the Dutch border, but it also means that it's not that far away from the Belgian border as well, because it's south of the Netherlands. And they have tons of them. So if anything happens there or in France or whatever, that's so close to my home that we will be affected definitely. I mean, we all were affected here. I don't know, the people of my age will remember the time with Chernobyl, and that was not a thing that had to do with nuclear energy itself, but about handling it, about security. That we were all told not to eat mushrooms and whatever and so on. It also affected us. But with the security standards here, and I still believe that they have high security standards in Britain, I don't absolutely see no problem in using nuclear energy for quite some time. And well, EDF will have to answer some questions about the shutdown of a lot of French reactors at the moment and about their company. But well, ours weren't built by EDF. I just have to say that one. But nevertheless, it was a mistake, and it will definitely help the British if they can at least get the second one in time, in the planned time. It will help to get closer to net zero. But as I mentioned earlier, the politics in the UK that want to make a U-turn now, at least the Tories, will not help that much. I mean, they will destroy the progress they get through those nuclear reactors by making a U-turn on their climate policy now just for voting reasons. And so there the circle closes a bit. I started in this video. And that's quite annoying. So let me have a quick look, because I skipped something. Oh yeah, and something else that would have helped with let's say getting closer to net zero is not only electric cars but electric locomotives. And the DB Cargo UK, DB is Deutsche Bahn Cargo in the UK, they are putting their electric trains on the sidings because of the high energy costs. And in October 21, the British railway company Freightliner had already withdrawn its electric locomotives from service due to the extremely high energy costs. And now the largest freight transport operator in Great Britain, which is, by the way, the German DB Cargo UK, has followed suit with the same measure. So much, by the way, about always the Brexiteer stories with the British are the best and so on. The largest freight transport operator in Britain is Deutsche Bahn Cargo UK. Yeah, they had to set up a subsidiary after Brexit, of course. I don't know if they haven't checked if they had it before. They could have had a subsidiary there before, but now they definitely needed one. But they are the biggest, and they are taking 90 locomotives out of service now. And that is not a good thing. But they say the operating costs are so high that it's not doable anymore. Otherwise, transport would be so expensive that no one could do it. And they have to switch back to diesel. And that will definitely not help the environment. I mean, in the next few weeks there will not be so many trains. It's, at least in that was freight, but there will not be so many trains where people can use them because there are still strikes coming. That's why I said it last week. That's why I'm glad that my friend will return to the UK before all of this starts, also at the airports, because we are still, some have already started, and we are still facing strikes during the next week as well. I think now they wanted to strike from the 29th to the 30th, and that has been cancelled. But they will strike from August 4th to 8th, as far as I know, at Gatwick that was. And RMT started with the train strikes. And others will go from tomorrow until August 5th, and then again from August 7th to August 12th. And it will affect the airports as well, because, for example, the Gatwick Express service, that's between London Victoria and Gatwick Airport and Brighton, will not operate. And there are some others as well. It would have been the same when I was living in the UK. I flew from Stansted to my home city here because there were flights. There are no flights anymore after Brexit, but they existed when I was living there. And then from Stansted I had to use the Stansted Express to London. If I imagine landing in Stansted and there wouldn't be the Stansted Express to get to London quickly, I would have been in trouble. But yeah. I mean, if they have to find a solution, but as long as the government tells them not to offer anything higher, that will not be fun for the people. I mean, we have had train strikes here as well. In the end, they came to a solution. We had the same here with public service, but when I compare the wage increases of our public servants with those in the UK, there is quite a difference, and it didn't heat up inflation here in Germany when they did that. A lot is more expensive for my city council here, of course, because we have a lot of public servants in the city and they have to be paid more, so our annual budget will be much higher because of that. But it didn't heat up inflation. As I said several times already, prices for a lot of products here have fallen. Now, for example, milk has fallen under €1. In the meantime, it was much higher during the peak of the inflation, but it's under €1 again. Will not be a reason to celebrate for our farmers, for our milk farmers, because they obviously need more to do sustainable business, especially when they want to go more to we call it bio. Others in English it's organic. They will definitely need more, but that's just an example what you see in the supermarkets about the prices. Yeah, we still have a higher inflation than the 2%, which are the target inflation, but prices are falling here. And to my friend that was just here from the UK, I talked, of course, also about shopping and everything. That's no fun in the UK. But Sunak has some very interesting ideas anyway at the moment, because the government wants to tighten control on courses with poor career prospects now. So they want to really hit on their universities again. But a sentence I heard there, why they're doing this, I will talk about this in the end of that topic, is really the the hard one, because the cabinet plans to regulate so-called rip-off courses more tightly in the future. That's what they call them. And they said study programs that fail to deliver good results and suffer from a high dropout rate will be subject to strict controls in the future. Has nothing to do with the students. No, must be rip-off courses. I mean, we all know this, and we have to give them that. Britain has some of the best universities in the world, but a small minority of subjects are not subjects that in the end you will be a millionaire with. I mean, we have this everywhere. If you study certain subjects, you cannot expect to be a millionaire afterwards, but that's the choice of the students. And it changes. There was a time when you studied computer sciences here in Germany, you could get a job from day one. Then we had a time that half of them, after their studies, couldn't get a job at all because there are far too many of them. And that changes in time. But the government uses courses where people will not earn so much money. As an excuse, they say it's taxpayers' money and we're spending billions of pounds in unpaid tuitions and stuff like that, that they want to tighten those courses. I mean, they want to reduce the prices from 9,000 to 5,700 pounds, but they really want to interfere with access to certain courses in universities. And they really say they end up in bad courses at taxpayers' expense with no job prospects. And I really think, why can't the people decide themselves what they want to study? And seriously, we need people to study something in humanities and social sciences. They might have a lower income later than some people studying economic subjects. But if everyone studies economic subjects, we have a lot of people without a job in the end, because there are not unlimited jobs like that. And if people start arts and language, let them. But that's a weird thing to do again. But the hardest thing about this topic is the reason. They say they can play tough here again, say they are protecting taxpayers' money. And the main reason is what I heard here in Germany, what they said about this is, those people studying arts, languages, etc. are not voting Tory anyway. And that is just another example. Too many caps, Verti. Nightbot doesn't like caps, and I don't like caps. I delete caps lock comments under my videos, by the way, because caps lock is shouting at people. But good evening, Verti. I haven't seen you earlier because I was looking on the screen most of the time. But studying, as I said, if everybody studies economics or everybody studies medicines, there will be a lot of unemployed in the end as well. And not everyone is made for that. I am not made for studying medicine. Nah, not really. And it's the same with other things. So let the people make their own choices. That is what, in the good term, I always have to say this because of the American views here. Liberal democracies mean that the people can make their own choices. And I mean, in the UK, they have to pay tuition fees for those courses, and have to repay them in the end, or have to pay them immediately. So let them choose. But this is just something else that is used for getting votes in the end there's so much campaigning already going on. There's no official campaign yet. They haven't even talked about their campaigning their election manifestos, really. But there's so much campaigning already going on that you see every week in the news tickers. It's unbelievable, and the ideas they get. I mean, we talked about. I have to scroll up again because I put it somewhere. This time I decided it's more eco-friendly not to print out so much, but it was easier to do. But I made a list for myself, and it's a bit longer. Sorry, and that was the other thing that they just do for voting reasons, and that's the thing with the BB Stockholm, if you remember that. That's one of the barges the government hired for refugees. And now there are more and more criticism is coming up, and they're calling this a prison ship. I have to bring up that topic because in Great Britain, you know, the ship is to serve as accommodation for refugees, and human rights organizations see this as a violation of the Geneva Convention. And you know what I think about the Tories and their refugee policy. And I can understand that some people might not feel comfortable after escaping from a war to be in more or less more crowded spaces. But there I have to disagree with the human rights organizations. They are not against the Geneva Convention. Otherwise, what do you say about the people that lived on them earlier? I mean, usually those are craftsmen, etc. That's what these ships are for. So it's not inhuman conditions. It's not ideal, but it's not that inhumane conditions. I mean, I criticized it for being far too expensive compared to the hotel stuff and so on usually, and not a very welcoming choice. But we also have to stick to facts when we criticize the British government for their immigration policy, because exaggerations like this will just help them get through with a lot of stuff. And it's important on both sides not to let the people get through with complete exaggerations. The Tories are using that a lot, but some human rights organizations are using that at the moment as well, and they are not doing the refugees any good with it. When you're criticizing this government for their immigration policy, stick to the facts. It's easy enough to criticize them with facts. There are enough that work against their policy with regard to migration at the moment. But don't go over the top like this. Yeah, the Rwanda deal is a different thing. That's against international law, and then it's right when the UN says it is against international law, it's breaking the Human Rights Convention, and so on. But with the BB Stockholm, for example, we don't need this dramatizing and going over the top exaggerations from human rights organizations, because they are not helping refugees with that. Because when people just look at those ships then and they say, where's your problem? Then the government can say, yeah, you see, they're always exaggerating. They're exaggerating here, they're exaggerating in the other points as well. And that's a point with credibility. And that's even if some people don't like it. But that's why I always try to completely stick to the facts on both sides of the fence, because that's important. And sorry that I just had to think for a second, because I tried to remember something that about a very, for me, very complicated pronunciation from reading. And please tell me if I'm right, but hi Roisin, haven't seen you yet tonight, so good evening to you as well. And please let me know if it was even close to the correct pronunciation. Oh, and hi, Big Marsh. Haven't seen you in quite a while, but you are a troll. Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't have time to have a look over at your channel, but I was quite busy. I know I haven't shown up at Max's as well for quite some time. And I'm still wondering if I was right with the pronunciation of Miss Malone's name. So, but I'm completely out of the topic right now because Big Marsh is a troll suddenly. Okay. Oh, well, finally I got your name right. At least happy about that. Yeah, but we were with facts, and there are some things about wishes as well. And so I cannot skip this week in the live stream what I read about Tony Blair recently, because even here in Germany I could read that Tony Blair said that Britain will rejoin the EU in the future. And well, the polls show support for rejoining, and they are climbing, and they are higher than ever before. But I guess was an interview. Yeah, it was with the New Statesman magazine, and there Tony Blair said that the future generation would take the UK back inside the European Union and reverse Brexit. And at the moment, it's 56% of people would vote to rejoin the EU, and 38% would vote to stay out. But Tony Blair believes that. But even when I heard about this topic, and he says it's a constant sadness to him that this happened, but even his party is ruling out rejoining the European Union or even the single market. But I still don't see it like Tony Blair in the long run, because if there was another referendum on rejoining the EU, and I'm not talking about the next 10 years or whatever, there you would have to stick to the truth. And the truth would be that, even if you always call it rejoining, it would be a completely new application to the EU through the complete normal application system, with a complete set of rules for new members and the so-called negotiations. Negotiations is when they go through these 35 points of the Ascension protocols, and it's called negotiations. There's nothing to negotiate. Yeah, there are rules, and a country that wants to join the EU has to fulfill those rules of the 35 protocols. They just call it negotiations. I had some talks in the comments about that name already, but that's what the EU calls them. But in the end, there's not much you can negotiate, because they are the same rules apply for every new member. And there they would need some honesty, because it would mean no rebates. It would mean the completely same set of rules for the UK as for every other new member. And it would mean as soon as the UK reaches the standard, they would have to introduce the euro. That is set for new members. There was an opt-out for members that were members already when the euro was introduced. There will not be an opt-out for any member joining. And this is just a few points of those, but there will be many more. And in a new referendum, in a new referendum campaign, the people in the UK deserve the truth so they can make a decision on the facts that are awaiting them. There is no use of a UK joining the EU again based on lies in that campaign again, because then we get the same discussion right afterwards when they are negotiating with the EU through the 35 protocols, and they have to sell to their own people what this suddenly means. Yeah, they had, to quote the famous Brexiteers, much more sovereignty before Brexit than they would have as a new member state. Yeah, they still have the sovereignty, but they have to agree to many more conditions than they ever had, because the UK was in a luxury condition before Brexit. They will never get that again. And that must be something they should be aware of. Yeah, Big Marsh, you're funny. Do you have a list of my favorite troll comments you're using on other channels now? Oh, that's funny. But yeah, after one referendum that was based on lies like hell, the people in Britain deserve a campaign, if it ever happens again, to come to a referendum, which will not happen under the next Labour government if it comes in 2024, because they said they will not rejoin the EU, they will not rejoin the single market or the customs union. But if that ever happens, that they come to the point where there will be a new referendum, there has to be truth about what it means, because it does not mean to rejoin on the old conditions. And that will hurt some people who are pro-rejoin, but there you can see that I'm really insisting on being as factual as humanly possible here on my channel, because that would be the truth. I mean, there are a lot of young people who were not allowed to vote in the last referendum. There were a lot younger people who are not that young now anymore that didn't bother to go to the vote on the last referendum. And a lot of them will probably vote for rejoining if that happens. But they have to rejoin based on the truth and the consequences that would mean. Of course, it would be good for the British economy. And it would be good for the average people, because if the economy is doing better and all that happened is gone again, the people will be better. But it will have consequences about the, what to call it, the sometimes imagined identity or something. If they want that or not. But nevertheless, I want to have a quick look in the comments what's going on, because there's a lot going on at the moment. Scotland will be an EU member long before England applies to join. Well, that is something, that I'm pro that I'm pro giving the Scottish another chance of having a referendum. But with what's going on in Scotland, I'm not so optimistic about that, that I see that very soon in Scotland again. Because we know what happened with those questioning of Nicola Sturgeon and her husband and so on, and a lot more was going on in Scotland that wasn't going so well anymore. And I haven't heard about this grassroots campaigning that the First Minister wanted to start this year after taking over. I haven't heard a lot about this in a long time now. And so I am not that optimistic to see anything happen there. We all know about the conditions that and the ruling of the Supreme Court that they cannot do it without the consent of the UK government, which they will not get. And I don't think even when Labour moves into Downing Street, they will not have the consent either. So I seriously have my doubt that we will see a referendum very soon. And you know that I always say that the people should have the right to have a second referendum because the conditions were completely different in 2014 than they are now. But nevertheless, I'm not very optimistic. Well, Brian, and your question about what the other members would say about the UK rejoining. Well, first of all, nobody would be very keen of them rejoining, because with all the political ballast they have there at the moment and the behavior of the Tory government towards continental Europe, if we leave out the Ukraine war now, but on everything else, I don't think they would be very keen on seeing the UK in the EU at the moment. They have enough to do with Poland and with Hungary. They don't need a third one of those. And everything else just depends on the 35 protocols. If they apply for joining the EU, they will go through the 35 protocols. If they succeed there, which in a few places I would have my doubts at the moment after some changes in the UK, they would have to reverse some changes to be allowed to go there again, or to pass the 35 protocols again. And then in the end, it would be up to a vote also in the European Council. And with a changed government in the UK in some decades, not earlier, I'm talking about some decades, and with a changed government in the UK, with a changed attitude in the UK towards continental Europe, I can imagine that they would let them join if they accept the conditions. And that's the point where I see the bigger problem. I don't see that a big problem that in 30 years the UK wants to rejoin, passes the 35 protocols, that the EU member states say no. I rather think that the UK would still have problems with the conditions of joining as a new member. And so I don't see the EU member states as the big problem there. But we also don't know what reforms will happen until then. We will need reforms in the EU. There are new members that want to enter the EU, and some are working hard on that. And it's a lot of countries want to be in the EU. There are a lot of applications and accession processes running on different stages. And there are several countries that want to get into the EU. And even Turkey started that again. But I don't see Turkey in the EU. That's another thing. But as I said, it will not be about the member states that they are against it. I see the bigger problems in the UK to accept the conditions that would mean. And that's why I think that is really depends on the mood of the people at that time. And before I switch to another thing, Verti says 40 to 50 years. They need to become a democracy first, and that is a journey. Well, first of all, yeah, Bertie, I know what you mean, but of course the UK is a democracy, and it is one of the older democracies, and that worked quite well for quite a long time. But this government, or the governments of the last 13 years, showed us the problem of the British democracy if there is a government that wants to abuse them. There we saw why it's problematic not to have a written constitution. And we saw this with several of the Tory governments in the last 13 years. And we see that again now, because there are no strict rules for the governments. And there is a really bad problem with the separation of powers. Because, of course, take the German Bundestag. Of course, the parties that form the government have the majority in parliament. But first of all, we have a lot of minority rights in our parliament that do not exist in the British parliament. Our opposition can force a lot on the government in parliament. That is not possible in the UK. And if someone does not vote with the government from the governing parties, he doesn't get immediately, remove the whip, and has no chance of being of stand for this party in his constituency again, and so on and so on. It's not that easy here in Germany to do that to someone, and just not voting with the government. If our member of parliament, if we were in government now, would not vote with the government, we would not immediately kick him out here from, and it's hard to kick someone from a party here in Germany also. So there are a lot of things that were shown by this Tory government where the problems in the British democracy are. They are much older than democracy here in my home country. It worked well for a long time, but it works well as long as the governments work within the system and not use the system against democracy. And that's what some Tory governments were doing in recent years. And that's why I absolutely think that there is a lot of reform needed, and I'm absolutely sure that they need a written constitution. I know that some will be really angry now because of tradition and everything, but they have shown you why I'm saying this. And that is really a dangerous thing. And the EU has a lot of arguments and about blocking money and everything with Hungary, because they are trying to copy within their system what the UK is doing now in the UK a bit. The government, I mean. And if they were in the EU, they would be at the ECJ already for some of the laws that came up, for some treatments there with the parliament. And that's definitely why the Brexiteers and right-wing Tories don't want to be close to the EU. They couldn't abuse the system like they do in the long run if they were still in the EU, because the EU would be very loud in telling them what they are doing as well. Now they are a third country, and the EU doesn't interfere in the politics of another country. And that's why they are not shouting very loud about some things happening there at the moment. But they will definitely have a say on this, on their discussions on in the negotiations in 2026 about the TCA, in the talks about the Northern Ireland Protocol. I don't want to go. I really would love to know what's happening behind closed doors in all those talks there. But unfortunately, that is far beyond my pay range. But nevertheless, I was talking too much already again. We are far more than an hour, and you know that on Sundays I only want to do an hour because Ellie, I hope it worked with your cooking and that you can have dinner now. And I didn't keep everybody else from something important, but I really like this. And Big March, thanks for visiting, and all of you. And I hope to see you again, of course, tomorrow morning in my next regular video. And of course, someone during the week I will set up the live stream for next Sunday again. And I have started it with Nightbot earlier, but have a look on my new Outside Views channel. If you like it, please do subscribe there as well. It's doing really well. I put it on Twitter and Insta and so on. Today I already got more than 10,000 views on the new Outside Views channel, and about 230 subscribers now. So for a few weeks I'm only doing this with a completely new topic. It's really doing well, and I would love to see some of you there as well. And there it's easier to see the comments at the moment. It's not that many as on my other channels. But nevertheless, come over, have a look. If someone of you likes Star Trek, you might think about playing the game in your spare time a little bit. There are a lot of people from all age ranges. And so in my alliance, I have people, even people that are much older than me. And so it's quite nice. And from all over Europe, the servers are between... There's a US servers, there are APAC servers, and there's an EU server. So, but the British are still included there. I have a lot of people from Britain in my alliance, for example, and so you there also you can talk with people from all over Europe and other countries. Sometimes they end up in Europe when they're not in Europe, but it doesn't matter. And it's really nice. So just have a look on that channel. You might see some interesting stuff. Verti, thank you for your support here again. Democracy, yeah, that's the thing we all have to fight for, and we all have to defend every day. Because, just to say it at the end of the video, the right-wingers from the AfD here in Germany have made an extreme right-winger their top candidate for the European Parliament elections next year. They just did it yesterday, and he's an extreme right-winger. While I'm filming this, they were still discussing if they want to disband the EU, but I haven't heard about the results there. But if they do, I will definitely make a video in time on one of my other channels for the elections on how much Germany would lose if they would leave the EU. Thank you very much again, guys. Thanks, Verti, again for your support right at the end of the video. Have a nice evening, and I'll be back. Yes, I want to end.